a hitting assessment coming in today. This athlete is going to do both a hitting assessment as well as just some overhand throwing velocity, and we're going to take a look at her mechanics on high-speed video. Our assessment goes through a couple different pieces. So the very first piece of our assessment starts with a health history. So this is filled out by the parent or the athlete, and it gives us an idea really of what the athlete brings to her swing, to her overhand throwing motion, based on maybe injury history or her medical history. It's a great place for us to start this conversation kind of overall on this holistic approach to her player development. After we have a conversation about that, we take passive range of motion, which we do that of the hips and the shoulders. We do this passive range of motion because it helps us to understand her mobility in those joints without her doing any of the moving. We get those numbers, we kind of compare them side to side, both internal and external rotation, and just try to get a kind of an idea what her mobility is before we ask her to start moving. After that, we go through an active mobility screen that includes a bunch of different exercises that are very specific and tailored to the rotational athlete. Whether she's hitting, overhand throwing, or pitching, those mobility exercises are all the same. And so they include things like checking for lat mobility and thoracic rotation and some other things about the way she rotates and moves her body that we need to know if she brings those things into her swing or her throw or her pitch with her. After that, we go up a little bit in intensity of exercises. So we start with a couple exercises where the feet are on the ground and we're doing some moving, a little bit more than the mobility exercises. We move into some jumps and really get an idea of the kind of force that she puts into the ground and how she manages that when she lands. After we do all that, we go with a power and speed assessment. So we throw some med balls, get an idea of upper body power and trunk power. We go vertical jump, and then we do a couple of home to first sprints, obviously very sport specific, to get an idea of how she puts power into the ground and the power that she's able to generate. So after that, then we move on to the skill assessment portion. So for her as a hitter, we start with some front toss. We use Rapsodo to get ball flight information. We put a blast sensor on her bat to understand how she's swinging her bat speed and her rotation. We then move to some machine work, collect the same things with Rapsodo and Blast, take some high-speed video. The very last thing in hitting that we do is we put some sensors from 4D Motion Sports on her and basically get an idea of her biomechanics of her swing and put all of this information together to get a very clear picture of her swing mechanics and then more specifically how she brings in her mobility and movement capacity and power and speed into her swing. For overhand throwing mechanics, we look at velocity and we take some high-speed video of her overhand throw and just kind of add that into her story as an expression of how she really produces very sport-specific power. Overhand throwing obviously is very sport-specific for softball, so we want to make sure we capture that as part of our assessment. At the conclusion of all of that, we sit down and kind of put together both sides of her story, her movement quality, her mobility, the hitting data, and then essentially tell her her story of where she sits right now as part of her player development journey. The goal is for her to understand all of this information about herself, to see the story as it kind of plays out before her with this data, and to give her a very, very clear idea of where her journey should head next to help her reach whatever she's trying to achieve.